Hey, welcome, 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 Traci. I was almost calling you Tracy Chapman.
Tracy Chapman or
Yeah,
Chaplin?
Chapman is a folk singer.
Right, Tracy Chapman. Yeah, I'm a little bit pale to be Tracy Chapman.
You got a fast car.
I do that. Yeah, I do like her sound. Actually, what was her? She had a song that was. She has a song that was just
Uh-huh.
recently remade by a country singer.
I think it's "You Got a Fast Car." You got a fast car. I'm one of them. I'm
Sing
not
it,
gonna sing that.
sing
Da
it.
da 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 da. Da 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 da. Maybe we'll get some. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh my gosh! Can you wait? Hold on for a second. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Good, good, good. Because I had put myself on mute and the thing is like kind of blipping at me. And I'm like, okay, does that, I forgot. Does that mean that he seems to be able to hear me?
I
It's
can
one of
hear
those
you.
tech days, you know?
Hey, I know, I know. What? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the EP7 Season 5, April 24, 2024. My name is Wulwyn Port and
I am Tracy Phillips.
not Tracy Chapman.
I'm not Tracy Chapman.
So, what
Yeah,
are
no,
your tech?
Tracy Chapman is a totally an amazing singer, which I am not. Very different person. But I was going to say about the
Yeah.
remake. It was funny because my daughter, of course,
Hmm.
this day and age, the kids hear the remakes and they think
And
that's the original, right? And so I'm like, oh, okay, it's a country version, but I have to say this, like I love Tracy Chapman, but I
mhm.
actually like the remake better.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
whoever this, I mean, if you could put in if you guys know who the guy, the country
Luke,
western
I think
singers.
it's Luke Combs.
Oh, Luke Combs. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So he does a
Yeah.
great job. I like his rendition of it.
I tell you, now you could make me want to listen to it because
Now we're gonna pull up the song.
I listened to it earlier, before, not earlier before this show, but in the past I heard. I was like, okay, sounds pretty cool.
It's a totally, obviously a very different sound. Great
Yeah.
song, and
Hmm.
just to hear it made a little bit differently, I always appreciate that. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are your tech woes?
oh,
You
you know my
said
tech
some.
was. I'm like for our audience, like I'm messaging Wulwyn earlier because I had a Zoom call scheduled with a potential new client, and I get on there and I'm doing my disco ball,
Oh
you
my
know,
goodness.
thing like we did. I was doing a couple of episodes ago, and you had to talk to me off camera. Like you were on camera, I was not on camera, which was made for an interesting conversation. Um, so I did as you asked, or I did as you suggested.
Uh-huh.
I restarted my computer, and that seemed to be it. But I also swapped out my
Gotcha.
camera.
Gotcha. Hey,
So
looking good.
if I'm looking more crisp today, it's not because I got more sleep. It's because I have a new camera.
Ah, so what's going on in your life? We have one comment already. Let's
Oh yeah,
see. Hey, Carl. What's
it's
going
our buddy
on?
Carl. Hey there, Carl. Nice to see you.
Ooh, Carl, I had a purple polo shirt on, and just before the show, I went, nah, I'm gonna switch it. I don't wanna, because I think I looked at previous EPs, and I think 4 or 5 EPs ago I wore that polo. I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna wear it again. So I ran in and got this one, and lo and behold, Traci comes on, and she's in white. So there goes those sleeves.
my my crazy sleeves. Yeah,
Ah,
they move on their own.
so
Uh,
we're in synergy today. We are flowing. We are flowing today. I can feel it.
you can feel it. So
Yeah.
where's the flow? Where you see it? You can feel it, but there's also got to be other things going on. Like where have you been noticing more flow in your life, or less
Imagination.
flow, or where flow has come up as
Imagination.
mm,
Future dreaming. I mean, cranked the dial on my expectations, my dreams, and just before coming in on here, I I just was meditating and praying, and whew, Traci, there was a flow that, I mean, I was like, oh my goodness, really, really, really. I mean, things of what I'll be doing in the future, how where I am now, and everything that has been, where it's going to, and just putting pieces together that I didn't know,
mm,
all for sitting down for a couple, maybe for an hour or two, praying and just being quiet
hmm,
and letting God, just flow through. And it's amazing. So, imagination. And I tell you this, Traci, in Liberia, prior to me coming to, just an example of what's happening now, prior to me coming. So we didn't have microwaves in Liberia. It was, we had food warmers, put it in the oven, keep it warm, or wrap it in a lot of um, tablecloth, like, I don't know what you would call it, but wrap it up to keep warm, and it would keep warm. But I remembered way before then in my dreaming, I said, I when I get home, I'm not gonna light this, or we do a cold pot. It's like a grill that we would light and warm things on. I said I wouldn't do this. I would just press a button, get my food, put my food in this thing, and press a button, and it would warm my food, and I would take it out, and I would do this. Um, Came to the States in '95, and I'm warming my food. I open it and I put it in, and I close it, and I press the button, and I go, oh my goodness. So, in every single thing I've dreamed,
mm,
Traci,
mm,
has come to pass. So it's now coming into the mill, in the dream mill, to start to create even newer ones and crisper. It has to be crisp. It has to be clear. It
mm,
cannot be general. It has to be, I had 2 kids before I knew I had 2 kids. I was driving and I was, hey, stop kicking the back of my chair. And I will explain it to Verlin. She go, oh, you crazy. 2 kids. I mean, so many other things. So, you know, um, that's what's to my forefront now, creating these mega, super mega imagination frameworks that I just know, because if I can see it, it's going to happen.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing from that is that you're stepping into, like, you're owning your powers, right? And I'm hearing this from a lot of people, is like they've always been there, but I think that there's this, and we've been aware of them on certain levels. Obviously, you've embraced them, but it sounds like there's a deeper owning of that, which is such an important, like, I think I've talked about this before, but I see development in four stages. There's first the awareness. We have to build a certain amount of, again, we can talk about it as self-awareness, in this particular case. And then we have to engage with that awareness, right? The second stage is the engagement. So we have some
Mm,
information and an awareness. Now let's throw the spaghetti up against the wall to see what sticks. Let's go out there and test what we've come to be aware of.
mm,
After we do that for a bit, then we start to recognize these things about ourselves, and we start to then go through the ownership stage, right? But between the engagement stage and the ownership stage is what I like to think of as the sorting hat stage. And
mm,
it's like the birth canal. What stays, what goes? What do we, and a lot of people are going through this right now. It's like, what is conditioned self? How have I
mhm,
identified myself in ways that the world I has impressioned upon me? I've
mm,
come to think I needed to be, or that I am, based on what the world has told me about myself,
mm,
versus who I was designed to be, right? With all my flaws and superpowers,
mm,
and that's the sorting hat phase. And then we reach the ownership stage, where we've owned the things that we've chosen to get sorted into, right? That this is who I am. I have
mm,
these superpowers, or I have these, you know less than shiny parts, but I own it all. And then as we engage more from that space, then we can move into the sovereignty space, where we're being it, we're embodied, right?
mm.
We're not even contemplating our belly button, we're just being that. And that's where our service really starts to gain traction, right?
Mm,
Is that we're not just blips and spurts, we're all the time, right?
mm,
And I haven't reached the sovereignty stage yet. That's what I think we all subscribe to. I think we visit there, in certain ways from time to time, but consistently, um,
mm,
to be being it, right? I think about that all the time. Is that, as I'm aware of my design, and, like, for you, part of your design is being clairvoyant, right? Is knowing what is coming next, like being able to see, you know um what that is going to be, parts of your life, or parts of the world, and what that's going to be like.
mm,
And so when we get to that, and we're just being it, we're just like, everything we say, everything we put out there is coming from these places. Because I do believe that's our designed value, right? When we
mm,
show up and we give these gifts, that's the service, right? It isn't
mm,
from this place of striving to do what we've been told the world, wants of us. It's really to recognize that deeper design. And I feel, in accordance with how God created us. I mean, we were
mm,
created with this design for particular reasons, and that's also why He places us in certain positions. I was
mm,
talking to a client the other day, and he said, I keep getting pushback from my organization, but I have such a deep knowing that I'm here to disrupt. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
Correct.
And it's bridging that gap between what we deeply know, even though it's challenging. Part of, the more that we are able to embrace that awareness and that ownership, the easier that, even if it's challenging, the easier that challenge becomes, because now we're operating from a why, a place of purpose that's very different, right? We're
Mm,
like, I know you don't like it, but that's why I'm here. You know what I mean? I know,
mm,
I know you don't like that I'm disrupting this, but trust me, I'm getting a higher
mm,
power, forecast on why I am physically placed here, right?
yeah,
It is because things need to be shooken up. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
yeah, yeah.
Um, those kinds of things,
Mm,
I speak to that because I am a disruptor, and it's not easy. I've spoken to this quite a few times, and I tend to have clients who have similar designs,
gotcha.
where whether they're male or female. I do find that female disruptors have a bit of a harder time, I think, because of the challenges of outside
Mm,
expectations. The systems we've lived in, it's made it easier for disruptive males than it is disruptive females, although it's not easy either way. Um, and it depends on what we're disrupting, but it is important to be able to own that, because otherwise we
mm,
don't have the confidence and the surety and the security we need
mm.
to be able to be that. And that's what the world
Yeah,
needs us to be, our design.
correct, correct. Eavesdroppers, I see you on there. And the question would be, how do you embrace really, really tough challenges when you know you're supposed to be there?
Yeah.
Right, when you know you're supposed to be there. So leave your comments in there. Let us know how you do that. You
And when
you
you
said,
and when you don't know, that can be even harder.
mm,
It's like, why
oh
do
yeah,
I have a client who's going through that too. Why do I keep having a hard time? Like, I know I'm valuable. I know I have value. I have these
wow,
credentials or this experience or whatever. And I keep finding myself in situations. That's where the reframe is. Well, have you ever thought that you're in
mm,
these situations because that is your value?
mm, mm,
Your value is through shaking things up. That's also another conversation. I mean, those who've owned it, it's a different discussion. Those
yeah,
who have they just think they have bad luck, or that nobody likes
mm,
them, or that they're always
mm,
problematic. I
mm,
spoke on a panel discussion last night to a group of executive women, and there was a young woman in there. I'd have to say probably in her early 30s.
mhm,
And afterwards, she came over and shared with me, and you could tell she was fighting back tears.
mhm,
She's like, this was really great conversation today, and I needed it this week more than ever.
mm,
And she just started just talking about a lot of the issues, not explicitly, and certainly, not, you know, giving away too much information about her organization, but just where she says, a lot of times I'm the only female in the room, and also too at the age I am.
mm.
She's like, I just struggled with being taken seriously when I know that, because what I'm saying they don't want to hear.
Wow.
And I see you and I know that, but trust that you have these amazing skills and desire to speak to where things need to be disrupted,
Mm,
because it's really necessary right now.
yeah, yeah.
And we have to have that almost blind faith that this is true,
Mm.
because it can be really challenging.
It is, I so two or three things here. When we talk about, how do you embrace it when you know you're supposed to be there and it's challenging, and then you brought in that aspect when you don't know it. Uh, I what comes to mind when you talked about that lady? I remembered when I got out of college and moved here to North Carolina, in the rooms in these engineering in the company where I worked. I was the only African American there in on it at the table. And the first the first not even the first few, there were times when it would come and say, "You're the only black guy in the room." And I go, "So what?" To myself, like,
Really,
"So
I didn't
what?"
notice. Thanks for telling me.
Yeah, no, really, I had those moments where you're the only black person in the room, and I'm like, so yeah, sure, I am. So
Great.
what? Because it's my narrative. I'm going to explain here, and maybe someone will have a completely different one, and I'm okay with it. Being from Africa, being from Liberia, a white person or a person of a different color would have that identical reaction with, I'm the only purple person here. Everybody else is dark. I've been in a situation where it's like that, and it doesn't stop me, or it doesn't limit me from communicating with this person or these individuals. So
Mhm.
when I come over to America, and there's a narrative of racism and all these different pieces that ongoing that plays in your mind, but I my entire upbringing is solid in who I am. So
Mhm.
when the conversation, or when I get in those situations and I go, the flesh tells you, "Hey, this you don't," and I go, "Yeah, so what? I am, and I'm supposed to be here." And what that did for me, and this is to individuals who find themselves not in the black and white situation. It could be the male, female, female, male, could be short, tall, it could be
Young,
whatever,
old, yeah.
young, old. Yes, you're in the room for a reason. And I remembered there are times where we'll be tackling a situation within software that I leaned on how I had to be innovative in Liberia during times when I didn't have a particular tool to utilize. And I would bring that mindset in there and say, but can we do this? And go, oh, wow. And thereafter, I go, I'm supposed to be in this room, and not saying I was trying to pump myself up to be, but it was just the knowing,
The clarity.
the
Yeah,
correct,
yeah.
the clarity, knowing that I'm supposed to be here. The second one was you spoke about consistently being in it, being aware of your design, and I think that's a state that we must, once you know why you're here. For me, once God has told you your reason, your purpose, and the Holy Spirit comes to superintend all of these things in you to move forward, that for me is a green light. That I my being, consistently being in it, is my weak old flesh coming to push me down in a way to say, oh, I can't. And then I go, oh, no, 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 no. I got to be my super self, or I have to be myself, which is extraordinary. All of us are.
Yeah.
I have to be my extraordinary self and consistently be impactful. Like I saw this kid yesterday in the gym. Oh, and I punt back to you right after this. He's about to walk to the Smith machine. It's a machine that has the, for those who may not know, that has the bar on it, on a slider. And he's about to walk to the Smith machine, almost touching it. Another gentleman comes in and is about to touch it. One is almost touching, one's in the process of touching. The kid, the younger college, high school student, looks at him and says, "No, go ahead." And I looked, and the guy goes, "No, you go." He said, "No, no, 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 you go ahead." He went. The young man left and went to another machine and began working. I'm working on a Smith machine. After I completed, I kept my things on, and I went to him and said, "Hey, if you want to use that, it's okay now." He goes, "No, no, I'm okay." But just to see him, and I have to see him again. I want to see him again to explain to him that his natural, consistent self is grace. He's graceful, and he must know that he's graceful. And because
Mm.
he's graceful, he has to when he's going to be in situations where people will attempt to overpower, think that they're overpowering or manipulating him, but his grace must remain pure. That he is graceful. That he will say, "Go ahead," and it's not them winning him. Oh,
Or the impact he makes is on like people like you who see that grace and that's been modeled for you, and it's like, I'm going to remember to do that too, or I'm going to try to subscribe to bring more grace into my sense of
yes.
being, because I watched this young kid do it without, in such flow, right, in such a flow state,
And
that it models. That's the thing, is there will be some people who try to take advantage of that, but then just as many people who will be inspired by that.
And Tracy, let me just say this last one. When you said that, that's what sparked this second aspect. Yesterday, this happened 2 or 3 days ago. Yesterday, I'm in the same old gym. I walk away to get a part, an addition to utilize. When I return, there's this lady using the machine I was using. I had my bottle and my phone right there. That's a sign that someone's still on here. And I came with it, and I looked at her. She turned around and looks at me, and I'm like, yeah. And I remembered the gentleman. And I said, go ahead. She said, I said, go ahead. So that that young man, the impact that he had, that he has, I have to go and see him and tell him, go. And just what you said is exactly what
I love
happened.
that.
Mm,
I love that. Well, there's a couple things, this is a slight segue, but I think it's so important.
mm,
I've said this before, but quote about story is that, we can learn a lot from our stories, but we could be so much more without them. And on
mm,
that note, when you were talking about, this, being the only black person in the room, or in cases in Liberia where you notice that there's, one white person in the room, the story we generate about what that
mm,
means is what keeps racism going, or
mm,
the distinction between genderism or ageism or any of the isms, right? It's the stories we're telling ourselves and that we're perpetuating, and then collectively.
mhm,
And in reality, just with grace and charm, you gave a completely different story. You're like, I'm telling myself a different story. Like, I'm not subscribing to the racism story,
mhm, mm,
therefore that's not my experience.
mm,
Because what we experience is based on the stories we're telling, not the actual reality. And people will say, I mean, they'll come back and push back on that, but I'm watching this, woman being mistreated, or this, person of color being mistreated. Don't tell me that's not reality. But
mm,
the thing is that, I said to the women last night, and I said, it is up to us to advocate. We want the place at the table.
mm,
We've been in systems that, are pretty much created by the male mind, right? The
mhm,
male rationale. It is what it is.
mm,
But we are in prime positions to advocate for the importance of our special, again, way of being. Doesn't make
mm,
it better than, doesn't make it worse than. It's that we have value, but we have to own it.
mhm,
The problem I see a lot is we keep perpetuating old stories, so it makes it impossible for those disenfranchised groups who keep perpetuating those stories to actually rise from the very stories that they're complaining about. And again, I'm not saying that there aren't legitimate complaints. I'm not saying that.
correct. There are
Okay,
legitimate
there are
ones.
very legitimate complaints, and we need to
Mhm,
be able to voice those too. I also see
correct.
women being very hesitant to say that there are differences, because they're like, well, we don't
Mm,
want to come across as anti-men. I'm like, well, unless your energy is anti-man, then you won't come across as, and anybody who wants to give it that spin, that's
correct.
their interpretation. That's not
Mm,
your meaning or your intention.
your
So
motive.
yes, we have to
Yeah.
speak to the truth, but we have to be very careful of those stories. Those are the things that are either allowing us to feel we have a rightful place, at the table, or not the stories
Mm,
themselves, right? It's the
mm,
story I'm telling myself. It's like, okay, well, I have to be careful because, and then these men are not making me like, is it these men in the room? Because unless they said something directly to you, and it may be
mm,
the mentality, but you have this great opportunity to say something different, or again, bring grace forward and
mm,
impact them in a whole new way. Be your value. When we're being our value and we're not trying to fight for it so much, you bring fight to the table, the other person's going to get defensive. It's a natural
mm,
reaction. But if you're just being it, you're not trying to convince anybody, or you're not coming with dukes up expecting that you're going to have to fight a fight because as a woman in the room, you've been mistreated in other, each individual situation is different. And that is the challenge. I mean, I'm not saying it's not challenging. I'm not saying
mm,
this because it's easy. I'm saying that the challenge is to say it's a new day.
mm,
And what am I choosing? One, what story? Am I choosing a story that's actually working to my benefit? In other words,
mm,
helping me move forward to a better
mm,
way? Or am I telling myself a disempowering story?
mm,
One. Two, am I seeing this situation as a new opportunity? Or am I basing it on every other opportunity I've had like this in the past?
mm,
And three, am I expecting certain things from other people? So basically, am I judging the room? Like if I'm saying to all these men, am I already immediately judging them and how they're going to
mm,
respond to me?
mm,
Right? Based, again, that's on a story, but that's also based on just a perspective, right?
mhm,
We're bringing that
mm,
kind of expectational perspective,
mm, mm,
right? That
mm,
assumptive perspective. and
mm,
and so all of this is to say, it's always about us. Like, we can say it's the world. I find the world just mirrors back to us what we believe.
Ooh.
You can definitely tell what you actually believe by just watching how the outside
Mm,
world responds to you.
mm, wow. You know, you that's I want to come back to that particular because that's a whole 1 hour conversation. But
Yeah.
I'm telling you, gosh, friends, who are you attracting? Business associates, who are you attracting? You know, just we oh, that's a juicy topic. But you know, when you were talking about we talked about disruption. We talk about, sitting at the table and saying, "Oh, am I supposed to be here?" The lady saying, "Am I supposed to speak out? Am I supposed to be a lady?" As you were saying it hit me the Greensboro four, right? Those four men who sat at the table in Greensboro, and it sparked the issue about racism and blacks only, whites only. They knew they were supposed to sit at that table. Had they continued to not sit at that table or attempt to sit at the table, we would still be in the process created by man. They had to come and disrupt it and say, you know what? You will serve me if you don't. Okay, you can waste Sundays and sugar and stuff on me, but I'm gonna sit at this table and that began to change. So what you're saying is I'm excited about this, is the ageism or whatever ism that's that you go and you see it, and it's a whole big old block that you're saying like, "Oh my goodness, I can't pass this. Excuse me. I can't pass this. This is gonna keep me down." You will stay down if you don't verbalize, and you said it, speak up. Women, men, young, old, there's a reason you're on earth for. There's a reason you're here for. You better grab life by the horns and take it. And then I come down to this beautiful thing that you said: the world mirrors to us what we believe. Tracy, the world mirrors to us. And that is so true. I see it in friends when someone says, I keep getting have you become a friend? My relationships are terrible. And if you become a good partner, have you become a good business partner? Have you become a good brother, a good sister? I think two EPs or last EP we were talking how you allowed your brother to speak, right? And he allowed you to speak, and it bloomed something, another dimension of your
Beautiful.
relationship,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
so as we're looking, and just what you're saying, if I had sat in the room and said, I'm the only person of color on here, um, and my belief was, that means I have to be subservient. I have to keep my mouth closed. I have to. That's what was going to happen to me. It was going to mirror it back, and they were going to go, or whomever's going to go, yeah, just shut up, Wulwyn. But
Or I have to
what?
fight. I'm the only black person in the room, therefore I have to fight for my right. Like, I could say that as a woman. Like, I mean, I'm usually dismissed
Mm,
by men. I'm not saying that this is true, but like,
correct.
let's say, the story is I'm usually
Mm,
dismissed by men, and I enter a room with new men I don't know. Then I just
whew,
immediately have my hackles up, thinking that I have to fight for my right to be in the room. Well, guess what happens when somebody shows up like this? Everybody else immediately goes like this, because it's
correct.
like, why is she like this? I don't know, but I need to protect myself,
Let's
right?
do it. Knuckle up. But no,
Yeah.
you're so right. But what triggered you with that quotation? What brought that thing up?
The quotation about the story?
No, no, no. The world mirrors to us what we believe.
I don't know. It's just like youth. It's just
Wow. You see,
true.
this is eavesdropping the moment you've seen right here live.
I mean, it's nothing new. Nothing has ever been spoken that's really new. I mean, it's an
Correct.
iteration of things that have been said, but I think what happens is when you really allow yourself
Mm-hmm.
to be in the moment,
Mm,
you receive the gold
mm,
that is meant to be spoken in the moment. I'm just borrowing it. Like,
mm-hmm.
I see myself, and I know you and I've talked about this a lot, as catalysts, as messengers,
Mm,
as, we pray for that before every episode. Let us
Mhm.
be the spokespeople for whatever needs to be spoken,
Correct.
right, in this conversation. And when you allow yourself to be open to that, because I know there's plenty of also time, see if I can talk. There's plenty of times also where
Mhm.
I've been in situations where something's coming through. I'm like, really? I have to say that? That is not going to
Mm.
be heard like people are not going to want to hear that. And I'm like, all right, and here it goes. And then everybody bristles up. I'm like, I knew it. Like, I'm busting in again. But, you know, I guess at this point in time, I'm so accustomed to
Mm.
that. What I'm
Mm.
working on is letting go of
Mm.
my ego's response to that. Right? I had that very thing that I spoke to about the Dukes. I found myself, this is the weirdest thing. So I have this really cool I have this project I'm working on now with a med spa, and
Mhm.
I'm essentially running all of their people, all of the employees through human design. So I'm doing a human design assessment and a 1 hour, kind of conference call to kind of let them know what it all means for
Mhm.
each one of the employees.
Mm.
And so I am knee deep in doing assessments these days.
Gotcha.
And what's really wonderful about that is because human design is literally about defining the design, right? Not behavior traits, not
Mm.
personality traits, but your actual design
Gotcha.
and how you were created to be in the world before you came out into the world.
Mm.
And so it's been really fun so to introduce me, because they're also coupling this with the disc assessment. So there's
Gotcha.
a gentleman who specializes in disc. So the two of us were introduced to the team on the Zoom call, and I found
Mm.
myself getting ready because I knew, and I mean, again, copacetic, like there's so much these assessments can do together, right? So it's
Mm.
not, I know mentally I'm not going into this like my assessment's, superior, but I found myself thinking about it in terms of that. And I'm like, Traci,
Mm.
what is
Mm.
going on here? Like,
Mm.
that's not the case. This is all me mentally before I, get on this call. Cause I'm kind of thinking about, cause I'm always, how do I feel? How,
Correct.
touching base with myself. And I was feeling like, kind of like I needed to prove myself. And I'm like,
Mm.
everybody on this call is excited about this. Who am I feeling I need to prove this to? And then I, tapped into it more. And it was like I was used to always being the person in the room that brought something unique that wasn't necessarily
Mm.
unique in a good way.
Mm.
Right. And that started way back in my family. Right. Where
Gotcha.
I was always the one saying the thing that nobody wanted to hear, that was weird, that wasn't in alignment with what the rest of the family was thinking, what
Mm.
you name it, that was me.
Mm.
And not popular. I always had the not popular viewpoint. And so I realized I had tapped into that. And I was so accustomed to, like, I'm going to show up. This belief that was coming up in my feelings,
Gotcha.
that I'm going to show up and everybody's going to be like, "Pfft," so I'm going to have to prove that. And I'm like, none of that is
Mm.
true.
Mm. Wow.
Right. So how can I rewire and reframe what's going on? This is very much a legitimate belief systems
Mm.
narrative that
Mm.
is coming up with me right now. How do I shift it right now? Because I'm going on in 5 minutes. So it's great. I mean,
Yeah.
even people who work with this stuff all the time, I mean,
Mhm.
this is the value of being
Mm.
constantly tapping in and
Yeah.
saying, how do I want to be?
Mm.
How do I? Because I'm here to serve. I'm here to bring this tool forward. If I'm going to make it about me and my ego beliefs and superiority complex because I feel inferior or whatever's going
Mm.
on,
Yeah.
if I'm going to
Yeah.
bring that to the table, that's what's going to lead. And that's not serving these people with what they need. It's also not
Mm.
serving me. I need to be
Yeah.
able to get beyond these stories. Right. So that is to say that now, and people say, well, when can you just finally get rid of these things? I don't believe you do.
You
I
don't.
believe you're always working with them. But when it's not even working against them and wrestling with them, because some people will say you just have to wrestle with the ego. I'm like, I care to use it as my advocate. My
Mm-hmm.
ego coming up is saying, I'm still here. You still have these parts of you that need to be worked on. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like we don't grow when we're in comfort. We only grow when we're in challenge. So it's this idea of, how can I challenge you to remember that you still have things to work on?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we're constantly aware of that, then we're constantly going to be vigilant and consistent in making sure that we're tapping. It's like brushing our teeth every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's being proactive and making sure that we're being vigilant and consistent with these things, so that we don't have, we do have the outcomes we want, and we have less of the outcomes we don't want.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's we're still on this topic. Seems wow, it's amazing how we speaking and we just stay on topic in the entire thing. It's consistently being, in that awareness of your design. And I say I have an example. I would practice and practice and practice basketball and would know how to do everything before every game, Tracy. The butterflies. Who am I gonna will I do? And what it did for me and what it continues to do for me even now, like before this show, I'm saying to myself, okay, Lord, what am I gonna talk about? I don't know. I don't know what to talk about. We what do we talk about? What do we speak? I think what it does is it boils the cream to the top. So that agitation. So we want cream. We love cream, but how? You got to whip it. So that whipping is us going. Ego comes and says, "No, no, stay down, stay down. You're not supposed to be here now. I know this. I'm coming here to serve." And once you do that frame, that perspective change, it comes in and you're like, okay, I'm ready to when the lights come on, I'm ready to do what I've been created for.
Yep.
So in this, I'm gonna borrow your word, in this human design where I know my value, mean being on top of my value, mean being studying and looking at, and not one thing I would say, this is a slight segue, knowing your value, knowing what you are, doesn't mean that you then go and do. You have to work.
Oh yeah,
You
every
have to
day.
work on it because if you do, ah, your relevance, your value may still be there, but your relevance will diminish.
Yep.
So in order to
Yep.
stay relevant, keep studying your craft, keep practicing, keep doing what you're doing. Let the agitation look over and see the 21-year-old or the 16-year-old jumping and dunking the basketball, and you 30 and going, "Oh, I thought I needed to stop. Okay, let me continue exercising. Let me continue training." So um,
Well,
our
sports are
humanity,
great.
our humanity, I think our humanity is important. And when I say humanity, is the questioning of, because we're not machines. The machine will always start and do what it's supposed to do at an optimum level if you maintain it. Our humanity and the agitation in us, I think, brings the best out of us.
Mm.
Mm,
And that's what I think people are really saying when they talk about empathy and
mm,
leadership. Everybody always just focuses on empathy, like empathy, 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 because there's so much data on it,
mm,
but really it's the humanity.
mm,
And I love that, because there's so much more to humanity than just empathy.
gotcha.
But it's like, really, that's where sports analogies are so important, because and I've heard them used much, much, much more in my world, which is
Mm,
leadership. Because it does show that kind of progression in a way of being able to say, I have skills, but then I have to develop those skills in order for those skills to really be valuable and valued. And
yes.
then as I do that more and more, I mean, you look at the greats, they never stopped. They never stopped. And then when they got out of basketball or whatever it was, they focused skill sets and learning around new things. I mean, some people, if they want to stay in the sports world, they go from, okay, where our bodies are breaking down, how can I take that value and still be valuable?
Mm,
They coach, or they own sports teams, and they advocate for
mm,
training, or what they do whatever
correct.
in that space, because they move themselves where they still can, you know, consistently and vigilantly apply themselves to those skill sets. But, I was in the same vein, I was talking about this lesson. So part of what we were discussing last night in this group, this
Mm-hmm.
panel discussion was leadership in a multi-generational world. And there were a lot of questions around the younger generations and kind of how they operate and what's important to them and what isn't important to them. And I said, the thing around value is, unlike the X generations and older, we were born and we came out of the womb and we were stripped of our innate value and told you're not valuable unless you produce something valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So we were the generations that felt that our value was in what we produced, whether that was good grades, an actual object, a service, whatever, like came from us. It wasn't us that was valuable. It was what we produced with ourselves, right? These younger generations, the ones that everybody gets a trophy, part of what that did was it taught them they're valuable innately. So they did not get stripped of their value. So they show up on the scene saying, I did all the stuff you told me to do. I went to school. I paid the money. I got my degree. Now where's my money? Yeah, where's my title? Where's my because I'm valuable. So where is it? And the older generations that are like, wait, no, you have to earn it. And they're like, what? No, I'm just valuable. Like I don't have to earn anything. Like, what do you mean? I did all the things you told me to do. Like I'm valuable, And so everybody's there, they're scratching their heads going, what the heck's going on? The thing about that's important, and as I said, is that it's actually a great thing that they know their value, because they're much more foundationally settled within themselves. Like they're the ones that be like, you're not going to treat me that way. See ya.
Yeah.
Whereas we were like, okay, I'll deal with it, and behind the scenes or whatever. So that's a good thing. But this is the piece, and it goes back to what we were saying, is that value can only be valuable when we consistently apply and develop what it is we have. So these kids, they're right. They have innate value. But one, they got to define it. They got to discover it. They got to define it. And then they've got to cultivate it. Right? And that's where there are a lot of times there are issues, because in corporations, the systems themselves, many of them were developed by Gen X and older. Gen X and older. Gen X was the latchkey generation. So we were the ones that, boy, do we have the best critical thinking skills on the planet. We are well developed in critical thinking. Now, critical thinking has waned. I mean, there's pretty much no critical thinking involved in school systems anymore, right? And kids are just, everything's given to them immediately. So they don't have to critically think either. So it's these critical thinking skills that need to be regenerated and cultivated again. But our systems are, this is why we don't have processes and procedures. Half the time I go in, I'm like, where's your process and procedure? You're just throwing these kids in and expecting them to know what's going on. Like, well, that's how we did it. Like, yeah, because you had critical thinking skills, right? So this is getting way deep into the organizational stuff.
No, let's do it.
That is what I see. It's like, if we just sit back for a second and go, oh, there's a heck of a lot going on here that we need to speak to. The woman who was speaking on the panel with me last night is a chief people officer for a company, and she was giving actual examples of her experience in developing systems, to model towards, right? Like these, you can't just throw the kids in when you don't have any kind of, system of not only training them, but also holding them accountable, right? Where is the accountability? You can't just get to the end of the first year and go, you didn't do what you were supposed to, and so we're going to put you on a, 30-day probation period. You need to make sure that they have all of the things in place that are going to support them and allow them to know where they are, where their benchmarks are, where they're, how they're going, model to them, give them the opportunities. And guess what? We also have to give them opportunities to develop critical thinking and some of the things that we came into the workforce with that they don't have. But they do have things in spades that we didn't have. And that's where, if we can capitalize on what they have and develop what they don't have, we're going to have a super workforce. And that's what she was basically saying, is that's what they've done in her organization, is that they've looked at the gaps, they've bridged the gaps. They're still bridging the gaps. I mean, again, it's an ongoing process.
Correct.
Because it's always discovery. We're always being curious.
Mm.
We're always looking to see where we can do it better. Always. It never ends.
Yeah.
You know, those organizations that have the fixed mindset of like, we're going to do this and when does it end? Like that right there is not the way we should be thinking, because we're going to get to a point, to your point, that we're going to stop, we're going to do this, and then we're going to get passed by. There's going to be something that comes in that's going to throw us, and then our systems are going to be, you know, defunct at that point. So it's about, again, cultivating curiosity, starting with ourselves. You know, I said a lot of the frustrations that were being voiced about certain things, I said, you know what frustration is something that hasn't been voiced. It's something that hasn't been communicated in you. And maybe it needs to start with you communicating something to you.
Ooh.
Right? So that you can get clear on it enough to be able to communicate to someone else.
Yeah.
But that's where we get to also reach for support and guidance and, you know, all that fun stuff. So collaboration is another key piece. Is we're not here to do it alone. We're not going to know how to do all of this alone. We don't all have the same skill sets or natural talents. So being able to lead, you know, when people say, oh, you're just being, when you can stop coaching, I'm like, coaching, my ability to do this is my greatest skill set.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't want me to stop doing that. Now, it may not be convenient for you right now, but trust me when I say that this is what I bring to the table that is most valuable. Like, again, you can opt out. That's totally fine. I'm not here to force it on you. But if you're asking for my support, this is how you're going to get it.
Yeah.
Because this is how I'm designed to do it. So I think that's the other piece, is that everybody's always trying to fall over themselves. Like, what's your design and how can I meet your needs? That is not my job. My job is not to meet you where you are. You're there to meet you where you are and to be who you are. And I'm here to be who I am. And I am here to listen and be curious. But I don't need to meet your needs for you. And you're not here to meet mine for me. Right? That's my job. That's your job. Right? I need to be accountable to meeting my own needs, but the grace, the listening, the care, the curiosity, those things are supportive, right? And that's where I don't have to agree with you. I don't have to even like you to be available to you with my skills, right? But I don't have to necessarily meet you. Like, again, it's we either meet or we're not a fit. And I think that that's where people truncate themselves, is that it's like, it's not about meeting someone where they're at. I don't believe in that. Again, I know that that's really, really challenging a lot of people when I say things like this, but guess what? That's what I do. You know, it's not about meeting. It is about seeing, being curious about, you know, listening to. Again, I've said all those things, but that's what I believe it is. It's not about me going, okay, what is your design and how can I form fit me and be the chameleon to your design? No, I got to be me. But I can't make room for you. That's different. That's very, very different. I don't need to leave my post to make room for you. Right? And but also too, if it's going to work, you need to make room for me. So it's a choice. And I think, you know, that's what we're trying to figure out as a human race right now. How do we stay true to who we are? First of all, who are we? How do we get clear on who we are? You know, and then how do we own that and stay true to that? And how do we make room for other people to do the same?
You know, you were, as you were talking about the multi-generational value complexities, I began to put in, you know, a quick system in my head, and was, you know, the video gaming process, right? Where they come in, they know how many levels in this game. There are 100 levels. At level 4, you will meet Kamachiton. He's the big dude or the big lady that will fight you. But here are hacks along the way. Here's your cheat mode, right? Here's this mode, that mode. And I think once we start to understand how they were raised, and they were raised on video games, right? And they are smart too.
That's data. Yeah, they can assimilate data quickly.
It's them coming now for us to take the time to discover how they operate, and they taking their time to discover how we operate, right? It's looking at at these mammoth IBMs in the past and saying, okay, and then coming forward to Blockbuster and Blockbuster staying as is and then dying because it's a dinosaur because it didn't change when Netflix came to ask them, let's change this model to this. It's them saying, huh, yeah, you guys have to be supple, but you can be supple and then have processes and systems in there. Because I remember, at where we worked, where I worked, we had a black ops team that was futuristic, just planning the future on where we would be. And I think that's where companies can utilize the innovative minds of this generation, this current generation, because they are when I sit and tell my son, hey, what do you think about this? And he brings in a completely different Jazz or Wulwyn brings in a completely different view. And I go, wow, okay, that. So if I do this, and then I add my piece and go, yeah, that can work. And it becomes a collective solution where
Collaborative solution.
they now say, I'm part of this. I'm valued. I'm valuable, right? To us, because be it Traci, how they seem to be independent and all, they still want us to tell them, wow, good job.
We all
They
do.
still want to
We all
correct.
do.
It's a human thing, right?
It's a
Is
human thing.
is
We all want
jazz
to be valuable.
jazz Jazz tells us this a couple months ago. I know I look kind of mature, right? I can speak mature, right? Do you know I'm not really mature? And I'm like, wow. And I understood what she meant, because when you speak to them and you engage them, they seem mature. And then you say, okay, do this. That's what a mature person would do. Take this process, take this thing and fix it. Go and handle it. And she goes, you really think I'm mature to do this? I'm going, oh my goodness. I'm speaking to an 18-year or a 19-year-old. They really can't, they're mature in certain aspects, but not in others.
Well, and it's not even an age thing because we're not mature in what they can do. Like, in other words,
Correct.
we're undeveloped,
Mm,
right? So
yes.
they're undeveloped in certain things, but we're undeveloped in ways that they're developed in, right? So I think
Mm,
that's the whole point: is these different generations. If we can come around the table, and that's what I mean by making
mm,
room for. You just
mm,
gave a great example of collaborative effort
mm,
where you're making room for everybody's value at the table,
mm.
and that's what we need more of. We need more,
Yes.
functional and organizationally sound ways to make room for the various, skill sets and the cultivation of them at the table,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
that's where a lot has to change, and quite frankly die. Like, we have to completely create new systems for
Mm.
that to be operationally sound,
Yes.
to actually have a operational way to make room at the table. And that's what people are clamoring for. Diversity, equity, inclusion. That's what it is. That's what it is. How do we make room for diversity, right? Different sets of values and perspectives, different ways of doing things, different ways,
Yeah.
different strengths, different weaknesses, different
Mm.
personalities, different all of that, right?
Mm.
Like, that breeds more innovation. So how do we make room for it at the table?
Yeah.
The equity inclusion. How do we create the voices equitably? How do we make, an equitability value at the table for all the voices? And then how do we create inclusion there, right? How do we
Mm.
make sure that all the voices are heard?
Mm.
That's, but then this is the other thing. It's your job to speak your voice. That's not my job to pull it out of you. And that's where I see a lot of managers or leaders
Mm.
trying to, I need to meet the person where they are and pull it. No, that is not your job.
Mm.
It's their job to meet themselves where they need to be and take the opportunity. I can offer and dangle an opportunity, but you have to step up and take it for it to
Oh
mean
yeah.
anything,
Oh yeah.
right? And so we're not
Yeah.
here to continue to do it for them,
Mm.
just as they're not here to do it for us. It's like,
Right.
well, can't these kids just understand what we're talking about? It's not their job. It's your job to figure out how to communicate that, but you got to make room at the table for them to communicate where they're coming
Woo.
from and for them to make room for you to do the same. So, yeah, I think we're in this transitional time that's very interesting, but a lot
Very.
of great opportunities.
Very. Oh my goodness. It's can't believe we have 45 more seconds on here. Ah, Tracy, I truly appreciate you, dear. It's
Likewise.
what? This thing just came on. Oh wow. Oh, forgive, 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 forgive.
It's all
But
right. We'll wrap up.
here we are now, wrapping up and saying our goodbyes. Tracy, you got 10 seconds.
Well, I just want to say I do appreciate you too, and I appreciate everybody who listens in. I mean, we have regulars, we have people that pop in, time and again, and then we have people that may be brand new to this conversation. But
Sure.
we really appreciate you being there. I mean, this is ultimately, yes, we get a lot out of it ourselves, just talking with one another. But this is really a place to come and put ideas out there if they can be of service, honestly, but also if they can inspire thoughts or things in you that you want to share as well. So
Correct. So see you guys in 2 weeks. That would be May 8th. Oh my good.
already
Oh,
in May.
May 8th. Well, everybody have a good day. Go out, do something, be big. Own
Yeah.
your space.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.